Great. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start by giving a brief overview of new entry, and then we'll get into a little bit of the background of the indicators of success, and I'll point out some of the common metrics that are used to report on those the projects. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the report system, and we will open it up to some questions at the end. Here's a screenshot to show you how to familiarize yourself with the WebEx platform. We do have a chat feature in your upper right-hand corner, and that's where you can enter in some questions that you have when we get to the Q&A. Or if you are having technical difficulties throughout the webinar, you can reach into the chat and let us know. And then your audio controls are in the upper left. And after the webinar ends, I'm going to be sending out a few things. I'll be sending out a post to this webinar recorded. It'll be linked on our website. I will also send out the Indicators of Success survey guide for this year for reference. And I'll mention what that is a little bit later. I'll also attach the whole measures guide, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. It is on our website, but in case you haven't seen it, I'll email it out to everyone. I will ask that you all provide a little bit of follow-up evaluation after this webinar, so I'll include a link to a survey. If you don't mind filling out your feedback, that would be incredibly appreciated. And I will also remember to include the presentation slides as well for you. Great. So what is new entry? We are actually a project of Tufts University's Friedman School of Nutrition. We do on-the-ground farmer business training, and we have a incubator farm here in Massachusetts. We also operate a food hub. We do production and marketing courses for beginning farmers. And we also operate on a national level, providing network facilitation, capacity building, and technical assistance. And some of the technical assistance work that we do is with CFP support, so we provide training and TA through a CFP grant that we got ourselves to do work like this. So we have a website listed there. It's nesfp.org/CFP. And there you'll find a ton of resources and links to past webinars that we've done. We have a lot of the material that I'll be touching on today posted there. We have materials for applicants as well as grantees. Some of you may have used some of that, some of those resources if you were applying. And then we also do one-on-one assistance referrals and proposal reviews, and it's all free. Great, so let's talk a little bit about the indicators of success, what it is, how it got started, why we use it, why we make you fill it out. The Indicators of Success survey is a required survey that New Entry sends out to all grantees of community food projects. We do this because we will then collect information on the collective impact of community food projects grants. We summarize your information that you give us in that survey and your beneficiaries' information as well into a report that we then communicate to the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture so that they can then communicate to the Congress the success and performance of the CFP program. And so they actually use our report to demonstrate the need for continued funding. So that's why it's very important that we have this survey. We communicate your responsibilities to fill it out, and we just want to make sure that we're gathering the most impactful information that we can about your projects. So again, the survey itself will come from New Entry via email. We normally send it out in the fall. With the deadline of around January. For the past few years, it has been January. So if you are a new grantee, which this webinar sort of assumes that you are probably a new grantee, You will not need to submit the Indicators of Success report until January of 2019. But we will be communicating deadlines and dates and timelines to you all as soon as we have that more solidified toward the end of the year. And with that said, it is really important to let new entry know if there are any changes in your point of contact or your PD for your project so that we can update our contact information in our records for you. I'll talk a little bit more about what Whole Measures is. It was developed by the Community Food Security Coalition's Whole Measures Coalition, and it's really used to inform the questioning around the indicators of success. So the rest of the bulk of this presentation really goes over how Whole Measures informs the indicators of success. So there are two components to the Indicators of Success survey. So there's a survey that you as your organization will fill out. And then we also send out a beneficiary survey that you then give to your beneficiaries and ask to report that back to you. And then we collect both of those surveys. And one thing to note is when you are going through the survey, a lot of the questions that are asked might not be totally relevant to your project because there are so many different projects out there. You all are doing very different activities, but the survey is designed to ask questions that are relevant to your project. So there are several categories of questions that the Indicators of Success survey asks. So we look at the project activities, and that would include things like, are you running a CSA? Are you doing nutrition education classes? Are you operating a food hub or a farmer's market, a store? Are you doing job training or skills training and things like that? So what your activities actually are for your project. The survey then asks several questions about your beneficiaries. So those include direct beneficiaries and indirect beneficiaries. So we do ask pretty specific information about the numbers of recipients or customers that you're working with. If you're facilitating the use of SNAP or WIC or other programs. And we also ask for demographic information as well to the best of your ability, especially with those direct beneficiaries that you're working with, so the people who are taking your classes, the farmers you're working with, or the people who are enrolled in your community garden plots or things like that. So we ask for you to provide as much information around that as you can. The next category of questions has to do with the food and land. So a lot of you are growing food or purchasing and distributing food. So we like to get a sense of, tell us about that food. If you grow, what kinds of things are you growing and where are you growing it and how are you growing it? Are you using organic practices? Are you using integrated pest management? Are you gleaning food and purchasing food? Is that food grown organically? And then we ask a few questions about the land that you're possibly growing on or performing your project on, if you own it or rent it, and then how much land that is in acreage. And we also, of course, want to know about the economic impacts. So are there jobs being created from your project? Are you expanding any markets? What about those market sales and participation at the markets? How many customers are you reaching? And that kind of thing. And then also community leadership and food policies. So this is obviously really critical to CFP. Is your project encouraging or facilitating individuals from disadvantaged groups into leadership roles? Are you focusing on the creation of food policy councils or policy networks? So that all ties in with the community leadership aspect of CFP. And then also equally important to CFP are the evaluation techniques. So we like to get a sense of the challenges you're experiencing with your evaluation process, your implementation. So we ask for a little bit of feedback about your evaluation process as well. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit more about whole measures. And as I said, the Whole Measures for Community Food Systems is a guide. It was developed by the Community Food Security Coalition, I think back in 2009. And it's still used to inform a lot of the CFP project components and the indicators of success, as I said. It's a really great document. The document that I'll send out to you that encompasses all of whole measures and explains what it is. It's a great guide to explaining how to use whole measures, how to incorporate it into your project planning. And it really goes beyond just the outputs and the outcomes of a project. So it focuses on what communities' values are and how to use those values to inform how we measure our work and community food systems work. And we know that projects vary really widely, so not every metric that we will look at here is going to be measurable by your program. So as I mentioned before, that sort of relates back to the Indicators of Success survey. There will be certain questions asked that aren't going to be applicable to your project. So in the next few slides, I'm going to be going over some of the main categories of whole measures, and there are 6 of them. And then within those categories, what are the targets and ideals that are put forth by whole measures? And then we'll talk about some commonly reported metrics that we ask for you to report on any indicators of success. And I'll provide a few examples from the 2016 Indicators of Success report that we put together. So the first category is healthy people. So the main sort of values represented in the whole measures guide underneath the category of healthy people are looking at healthy food for all, health and well-being, teaching skills and knowledge, uniting neighbors. So the questions that will be asked to get to, inform us about this category are, who are the populations involved in your project? What are the total numbers of beneficiaries and the breakdown of those beneficiaries in your project? Are you working to promote access to federal assistance programs? And some of the questions that we ask of your beneficiaries is for them to report on their change in healthy eating habits, how their lives were impacted by your project, either on a dietary basis or in a general life and community basis as well. And so we look at what's the ease of access to those fresh foods. And so one example, this is a chart that I pulled from our 2016 report that looks at, this is actually information from grantees that they reported for the fiscal year 2016 regarding their intake of fruits and vegetables on a weekly basis. And so you can see this is really just demonstrating that, that their access or their consumption increased over time. So the second category is strong communities. And so this looks at valuing a broad range of participation of community members, strengthening the power of the community's voice. Does your project involve aspects of civic participation, promoting civic engagement? And so some of the things that we would ask about include organizational partnerships, including any new partnerships that you created throughout this project. Also the number of volunteers and volunteer hours that you're having. And if there are any new or enhanced leadership roles that are coming about via your project. And then we would also ask to know the demographics of those leadership roles. And we also want to get a sense of if you're doing community food assessments and working on food policy council work. So that sort of encompasses some of the community aspects of CFP. And so here's a little bit of information that we had from our report in 2016 about new leadership roles that were created. And so we found the total number that were reported on. So this is just, the numbers that were reported from our grantees who answered the survey. And you can see the breakdown of, people of color into those new leadership roles, the number of youth coming into leadership roles, and the number of women having those leadership roles. And thriving local economies, obviously a very important component of CFP. So whole measures is looking at what is the investment in enterprise development that you're doing through your project? Are you promoting economic literacy? Are you focusing on diversified and sustainable farm businesses? So those are three major values or ideals put forth by whole measures for community food systems. So in the indicators of success survey, we would be asking you to tell us how many jobs you created, how many, if you're doing business startup work, how many businesses are being started as a result of your project, or business plans are being developed. Of course, if you're buying food, what does that relate to economically? What is the breakdown of your customers and sales? And we ask about farmer income as well. If you are working with farmers, how is their income being impacted? And business readiness as well. So those are some examples of some of the questions that we'll be asking around these local economies, the local economies section. And here's an example of the report from 2016 where we looked at the sales and how many, the percentage of projects that are doing direct-to-consumer or healthy corner stores, if they're selling to restaurants or schools. And so you can see the sales per customers, number of customers. So we ask questions all about those, things relating to sales of food. Right, vibrant farms and gardens. Obviously, a lot of you are growing food. So we would want to know, the types and amount of food that you're growing, the number of acres that you're going on, what kind of community gardens you're cultivating. And so, so the whole measures values relate back to, are you promoting policies that support small and mid-sized family farms? If you're engaged in this kind of work, are you protecting workers' rights, offering fair wages? And is your project respecting the historical context and the farm legacy that's around in your area? So in 2016, we got the number of people who are working with farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, farmers who are people of color, and farmers who are women. And we like to report on those trends and look at them. Hopefully we'll be able to document this over time. That would be a fun project. That's a goal of ours to do as well. But this is just one example of those vibrant farms and gardens sort of demographic. And sustainable ecosystems, right? So is your project, the activities that you're doing, are you trying to improve soil and water quality? Are you valuing ecosystem elements? Are you protecting biodiversity? Are you promoting policies that mitigate climate change? And so we'll ask, how much did you compost? And it's just important to keep, as we talk about these metrics, it's important to keep in mind all of the records that you're going to have to keep throughout your project, which hopefully you're doing already, or if you're having challenges with them, right? These should be triggers for you to say, we need to track this. We need to make sure that we're, writing down everything that we're doing and really tracking that throughout the life of your project. So production practices, by acre grown, by the number of projects. That's some of the breakdowns that we like to see. And here we have some information about growing practices that projects were utilizing. And so you can see the darker color represents food grown and the lighter color represents food purchased. And so we ask for, if you're using certified organic practices, sustainable land management, integrated pest management, as I mentioned earlier, or conventional practices. So, so again, it's important to track the information about food, not just that you're growing, but food that you're purchasing or otherwise distributing for your project beneficiaries. And lastly, but certainly not least, justice and fairness. So some of the values that are put forth by whole measure, obviously decreasing food insecurity and protecting food systems worker rights. We want to affirm diversity and dignity in food systems work as your project working to heal cultural and social connections among people, food, and land. And so some of the questions you might ask around that are you providing materials for non-English speakers? And what are the numbers of socially disadvantaged farmers you're working with, for example? And as we saw earlier, what are the leadership roles that you're promoting for, for persons of color, and as well as, Food Policy Council membership? How does that look demographically? Are you promoting fairness in those aspects of your work? Great, so that was just a really brief rundown of those 6 areas of the indicators of success and whole measures. And just to reiterate, the fall is about the time when the survey will be sent out by new entry via email. And we try to give plenty of lead time, so we will send out periodic reminders to submit them online. And that's another thing I'm not sure if I mentioned, but the survey all the information is captured online. With your beneficiary surveys, there's some flexibility to how you disseminate those surveys. And if you have any questions or challenges with getting your beneficiary surveys out, please contact us because we might be able to help you figure out the best way to get in touch with your beneficiaries or provide the survey in another language. Okay, so the next part of the webinar is going to focus on the report system. And so I'm assuming that a lot of you are already awardees, and in which case you would have gone into report to submit your project initiation, documentation, and the project financial report that was due on February 1st. And for those of you who may not be grantees, this next section I will present a lot of screenshots of the report system. So for a lot of you it may be old news, and for some of you who've never been in it before, it might just be a good introduction to what the system looks like and how to utilize it. I do have a link here for how to download the report guide for project directors. That is actually a NIFA guide, and I can send it around to you also. Many of you probably already have it, but it is a very helpful guide. It provides a lot of information for exactly how to fill in some of the questions that are asked through the reports, and it provides a lot of helpful screenshots as well. So the due dates for these different reports are as follows. So I already mentioned the project initiation form. You have already submitted that, very likely. The progress reports are due annually. They're due within 90 days of the anniversary of your start date. And then the two pieces of financial reporting you'll have to do are the project financial report that is done in Report, which was due February 1st. So I'm not going to touch too much on that in this webinar, but I'll be happy to answer questions if you have any, or try to answer questions if you have any. And then the other financial piece is the SF-425, which you submit via email to awards@nissa.usda.gov, which I will provide a little bit of information on that as well. So the next part of this webinar really focuses on the progress report that you will submit in Report. And that is a link to access the SF-425 financial report, which I can circulate to you as well. So this is sort of the login page for Report. This should look familiar to you if you've logged in. I'm going to assume a lot of you already have. But you will log in and then find your active applications at the bottom, and you'll click on your active application, and you'll be taken to a landing page, and you'll click on Progress Report, and that is where you can start. You can click on your draft there and start to enter information that we'll walk through sort of step by step how to enter your information in. Great. So that's just another screenshot. This was taken from New Entries report system a little bit ago. So the cover page has a lot of information that is already pre-populated from the information you submit in your project initiation report download or whatever. So I don't think there will be a lot to change here. It might just be good to look over it to make sure everything looks fine, but everything should be pre-populated from what you've already entered. And so the next part that you want to focus on is the participants. And so this asks for, so your PD and your co-PD are pre-populated already. So you will complete the information for your actual FTE for project staff. And then if you have any students working on the project, you will enter all that information as well. And then the information on your target audience. So this should include only those that the efforts for this reporting period were focused on. So you might only list a subset of your original target audience that you submitted in your initiation summary. And so products and outputs in this section on this first page that you come to are really referred to publications and patents and things like that that might not apply to your CFP award. So if you have, workshops and newsletters and other products like that, you'll click on other products and enter those there. And here is a screenshot of the drop-down of what different product types are that you can choose from in the other product screen. And you can enter, up to, I'm not sure if there's a maximum, but you can keep hitting the plus sign there to keep entering however many products you have with a corresponding brief description of those products. And then your accomplishments. So your major goals of the project are going to be, I believe, pre-populated based on your project initiation, and then within those goals, you'll write what was accomplished. What opportunities for training and professional development has your project provided? How have the results been disseminated to the communities of interest? What do you plan to do during the next reporting period to accomplish those goals? And this is an example. If you hover over, I think, the accomplishments, it gives you a lot more information and a prompt and sort of tells you, guides you how to answer the question for your accomplishments. And a good thing to note with changes and problems, if you have any major changes and problems, you'll probably have communicated that already to either the NIFA CFP staff, like Dr. Jane Clary, or the Awards Management Division folks, but you will have to capture that information here as well. So you should continue to be in communication with the program staff there if you have any issues that arise, but you will need to document them here. And so to submit, you'll be prompted to review, well, you can download a PDF of your responses before, or I believe after you submit. It'll prompt you to go back and check something if it's not been answered, as you can tell from all those little red asterisks that are, required information. It won't let you, I guess, progress if you are leaving things unanswered. The system will generate a confirmation email after you've submitted, and NIFA will respond with questions or edits within 90 days of submission. So the Federal Financial Report, the SF-425, this is a screenshot of where you can locate the guide instructions as well as the report itself. I can send a link around to that as well. And this is what the 425 looks like. I'm not sure how many of you have already had some experience filling out the financial report, but here we have just the general fields. I just wanted to give you guys a sense of what it looks like, and I'm happy to go through this form sort of in more detail with you if you'd like, if you have specific questions about it. But the form is pretty self-explanatory. You'll need to list all of your cash receipts and your cash disbursements, and that, the cash receipts is basically the amount that you've drawn down from your ASAP account, and the disbursements is what you've spent in the reporting period. And then the total federal funds authorized, that's your total award amount. And then from there you list your expenditures and your unliquidated obligations. And then on the next slide I have the rest of the form. And so under recipient share you'll list, this refers to your match information. And your program income, this is if you have income from your projects, or if you have included income in your original project budget, you'll need to list out those different numbers there. And then the indirect expenses, pretty self-explanatory. And then, of course, contact information. And that is about it. I totally glossed over that sort of on purpose because it's kind of dry. But again, if you have any specific questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And if you have really specific questions that relate to your project, you know, with regard to financial aspects, happy to hear those out. In a lot of circumstances, we refer folks back to the awards management division because they can be a great resource, a better resource for really specific project-based information for you. So I'm sorry to make that last part super quick. Kind of not sorry, but again, I wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So at this time, if you have any questions about the indicators of success, if you want to go into more detail about them or ask any other clarifying questions on the timeline or anything like that, I'm happy to take those now. So I just got a question. How many beneficiary surveys do we need to do? Your beneficiary surveys, there's really not, I mean, you should pass out beneficiary surveys to as many beneficiaries as you can. It's really hard to enforce sort of receipt of those surveys, and like I said, New Entry can be a resource to you to try to help you know, stimulate interest and get your surveys back to you because they're really invaluable. But if you're looking at, you know, if you're running a farmer's market or the direct beneficiaries obviously are a lot more easy to survey. So you need to capture as much information as you can. I hope that is helpful. Another question, if we need to change a line item cost, does that require prior approval or a modification? A line item cost, I have Kristen Aldrich on hand here to sort of help a little bit more with your questions.
This is Kristen Aldrich, just in regards to the line item. So an official or a budget modification would require approval if it is a change of 10% or more of your total budget. So if it is less than that, then you are able to make modifications without that approval. So it would depend on the amount, and again, only if it meets that 10% threshold would you need approval.
Oh, so let's say we said we needed 4 sheds, but we just need 2.
Right. Again, I guess I'd say, you know, that would certainly be something to report and let them know that you didn't wind up needing as many as you originally anticipated, and if you plan to reallocate those funds to a different area of your budget, again, it would just be only if it's 10% or more of your total budget would you need to get actual official approval. But it could be worth it to still, you know, as Kristen had mentioned earlier in the webinar, to communicate that to Dr. Clary and the Awards Management Division, just to let them know that this change in the project had occurred.
Great, thank you. Another person responded, it sounds like most of what you said is going by way of commercial use. What are the parameters of, say, apartment use, such as beds for residents to use for their personal consumption? If your CFP project involves you know, residential gardening and that kind of thing, we still would love to know about those metrics. So I assume this is in response to the indicators of success and the questions that will be asked. If you're implementing garden-based activities through your project, you'll be asked and triggered to sort of answer different questions that relate to that. And so we would still collect information from you based on, you know, even if you're not selling that those products. We would still love to know about the changes in your, say, your residents' approach to healthy eating, their food access. How has their lives been impacted by your program? Okay, so someone has a question on timeline. Our project start date was edited several times on our award space sheet and landed on September 15th of 2017. How should we approach reporting and the timeline since our project has been ongoing before the start date? I would recommend checking in with either, probably with Jane or the awards management division to make sure you know the exact date that you should be starting from. And then in regards to reporting for the indicators of success, if it will be the first time that you'll be filling it out, then I would say capture as much information that you can from the very beginning of your project. Does that make sense, Kristen?
Yeah, I might just clarify that a little bit. So to me, and I would definitely follow Kristen's advice to double check if there is any confusion, but it sounds like 9/15/17 has been the determined start date for your award. So that would be my interpretation, is that should be the technical start date that you're working from in terms of your reporting timelines. As for the indicators of success, the reporting time frame for that is October 1st through September 30th. So that's the main reason why we wait for new grantees to report on any activity until they're in their second year, essentially, because the time frame of October through September in terms of your activity in 2017 would, according to this, only be half of 1 month if your start date is September 15th. So at any rate, next year, as Chris had mentioned, in the fall, you'll be receiving the survey, which will be distributed, and you can report on any activity from October 1st through 2018 through September 30th, 2019. In terms of your other reporting deadlines, you would work from 90 days from the anniversary of the start date of your award. So if your start date of your award is indeed September 15th, 2017, then 90 days from that date in 2018 would be the first reporting deadline.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, for clarifying that. Another question, so for beneficiary surveys, does it have to be written or can it be done verbally? You can certainly devise whatever system will work best for you and your beneficiaries. You know your beneficiaries best. We have accepted survey results a number of different ways. So if you do a verbal survey, you will still have to capture that information down in some way, whether it's typing notes as you're speaking to them or writing something up. If it would be great if you could just type up all of the notes from that conversation and submit them to us that way. So no, you don't have to deliver a written survey to them if you feel like the information will be gleaned more realistically, more efficiently, effectively by asking them verbally. Then certainly that can be done as long as the information can get to us in a written way. So how should we approach implementation reporting considering this is an ongoing project? I am not 100% I understand the question. I think,
yeah, kind of going back to the previous question. So you just want to make sure that you're following whatever reporting time frame is at hand. So it will be, in terms of the report system, You have annual progress reports, which are for the previous year, essentially, of your project. So whatever the start date was, you're going from the start date of your project, even if it's ongoing work that you have been doing for many years or for months leading up to the official start date of your CFP awarded project, you're still going by that official CFP grant project start date.
Great, thank you. Are there standard beneficiary survey questions you would like to be used? We have existing surveys that cover most of the topics discussed, but want to make sure they align with your expectations. We certainly do. We have a standard survey for beneficiaries. Again, if you would like to compare ours with the ones that you're already asking, just to make sure that you're capturing the correct information and then get back to us, we're happy to talk that out with you and make sure that the survey questions that we ask are aligning with the way that you are communicating with your beneficiaries. Okay. Oh, who is the best contact for questions regarding drawing down funds from ASAP? Contacted the help desk. Okay. If you still need assistance with ASAP, I believe ASAP has a help technical assistance support phone number. I'm happy to find that for you and send it to you. Have you ever had any problems with ASAP, Kristen?
I have not personally, but I would say if you're having trouble contacting someone at asap.gov themselves, to potentially try contacting the Awards Management Division. Susan Bowman and Adrian Wooden are the contacts there. I know their contact information was listed in the last RSA for CFP, and you likely have a financial contact that was communicated to you when you were awarded. Yeah, if not asap.gov directly, I would suggest the Awards Management Division.
Okay. We are still available for the next few minutes if you all want to input any more questions in. My email address is also up on the screen. I'm happy to take your questions and find the answers for you, send you additional resources, or direct your questions to the appropriate party to help solve any problems you're having. And I will be emailing out a follow-up later this afternoon with the information I said I would include. So you're welcome to respond to that and ask any questions there as well. So that will indeed include a copy of this presentation, the slides, as well as a link to the recording. It'll include the whole measures for community food systems guide, as well as the indicators of success survey guide for you to review for reference and sort of in preparation as you continue your implementation of your project, and keeping in mind the things that you'll need to record in preparation of submitting your various reports. And yes, I will, so to answer Craig's question, I will include a copy of the beneficiary survey for your reference, just so you can get a sense of the things that are asked and start formulating the best plan to get in touch with them. Okay. Great. Well, I am not seeing any new questions coming in at this time. So please do utilize my email address. Feel free to shout out and let us know how else we can help you. It's been my pleasure to present this information to you today, and thank you to my colleague Kristen, as always, who knows all kinds of things that I don't. All right, so I wish you all the best and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you all.